So I can nearly guarantee that you've heard of the 80-20 rule or the 80-20 principle. You may also have heard it as referred to as the Pareto principle. I want to show you in the next few minutes why this is wrong and why thinking of your life and your work in terms of the 80-20 principle won't get you anywhere versus this alternative frame that I want to present to you. And I'll do that through three very specific stories or cases from my life through three of the general domains that I've put a significant amount of my effort and life into, those being respectively publishing and writing, marketing, that being a marketing business, and then social media. So what you're watching right now. The first of those is social media. I started out posting as a fitness influencer actually on social media when I was 12 or so years old. So what, 6 or 7 years ago now. And I did that for quite a few years and got nowhere. As in I was posting a video a day. I was posting quite literally hundreds of videos on YouTube, Instagram, TikTok even, and so on. I was posting quite literally hundreds of videos on YouTube and Instagram and posts and so on, and never really got anywhere. And I had, after 3 years of that, a few thousand followers across YouTube and Instagram, and I had, maybe a few hundred views video or post on Instagram and a few dozen views of video on YouTube. And that again was all I thought about for years. It was all I did pretty much every day. And then I got on TikTok. TikTok was the big thing, so I started posting videos, and my idea was to do a 30-day challenge where I did 1,000 squats a day every day. So 30,000 squats in that month, and I just filmed one TikTok a day about how it went and about the workout and the challenge and so on. And just like nearly all of my YouTube videos and Instagram posts, day 1 was a total flop, day 2 was a total flop, day 3 was a total flop, and so on. And I kept just hammering away at doing this 1,000 squats a day and putting hours into doing the squats, into recording the video and so on, and then editing and posting. And the account just got nowhere. And that was, 10 days passed, 20 days passed, 3 weeks passed, and I was finally getting to the end of this challenge, which I did kind of view as the cumulative result of YouTube and Instagram and my years on social media, because it was the editing knowledge, the fitness content, of course, and fitness experience and whatnot. And so I was finishing this cumulative challenge, right? I was 25, 26, 27 days into it, and still I had maybe 100, 200 followers on the account, and I was maybe getting, a few hundred views a video. Then I posted the day 29 video. This was one day before the challenge ended. I posted this, I went to bed, I woke up, I looked at my account, and it was 99 plus notifications. My phone was blowing up, and I looked and it was like 400,000 or 500,000 views that video had gotten overnight. That 400,000 or 500,000 views was more views than I'd gotten in the past 5 years cumulatively on YouTube and Instagram and TikTok. As in, that single video outperformed 5 years of effort. And then that video went on to get several million views. I finished off the challenge, and then the next 5, the next 10, the next 15 videos all started to do really, really well because of that day 29 video. So in that sense, again, that single video, that little piece of output, that 20 seconds of content did more in terms of views, exposure than the last 5 years of my life. It's actually more like 3-4 years. And so in that example, it wasn't 80-20, it wasn't 90-10, it was 99-1. And that's kind of the concept I'm getting into here, and I will get into in these next 2 examples. And that's that it's not 80-20. In 80-20, all that's saying is 20% of your input will generate 80% of a given output. So for example, if you're working 100 hours on a project, 20% of those hours will generate the bulk of the yield. Same applies to how you work for money, what you do in health, relationships, and whatnot, as in it is a fairly generalized life principle. I want to argue that it's not 80-20, it is 98-2, as in 98% of your input to a given output will not directly generate that output. And instead, the 2% of a given input is going to generate 98% of the given output. And the keyword there is direct, as in that video I posted on social media, that one video, that 20 seconds of content was the 1% or the 2% of work that generated a super majority of the yield by far, is an incredible amount of exposure. But the 98% the years of social media, the hundreds of videos posted, that all indirectly supported the one video, right? It was, okay, I know how to edit. I can think about the type of fitness challenges that I want to do. I'm physically capable of doing these challenges. All that kind of stuff. That indirectly supports the 98% of yield. The problem there is that it never feels like that. As in, you will put in these years of effort, you will put in your 100 hours, your 10,000 hours, and 98% of that won't feel like you're really getting anywhere. And before I continue on that thought, I want to cover the two other stories. The first of those is in publishing. I've been a writer my entire life. I started seriously writing, or at least writing longer form texts, when I was 12 or 13 as well. I have written 8 or so books in my lifetime now. You can see a few of those right here. And those are all largely about economics and business, but they do range across a few other subjects. The primary one there being, technology, cryptocurrency, and so on. That's not a pitch. Do not go and buy them. That's just context for this story. And out of those 8 books, of which I also have several unfinished drafts, which cumulatively represent maybe 500,000, if not a lot more, words written on paper, and also just thousands of hours of writing and then editing and then making cover graphics and marketing and all that kind of stuff. Out of all of that, there's one book I wrote that outsold every other book by a factor of 5+. And that book was this one, or the Modern Guide to Stock Market Investing for Teens, which I wrote in 2020 when I was 14 years old. Also, one more thing. I am partnering, and this is the only company you'll hear me speak about for a while. I'm partnering with a company called Odoo. They are a suite of apps for business owners and aspiring business owners and entrepreneurs. I'm going to make a video in a few days where I show you how a new business of mine is using Odoo and how I'm running it on their platform. They have everything from sales and inventory to accounting and a CRM. It's really just an incredibly useful suite of tools, and it's like HubSpot combined with Zapier combined with a whole bunch of other tools. And I polled you guys on the channel. You can see that right here, and I think 60% of you said you do want to create a product or service. If you do want to create one, and I'll make some more videos on that in the future as well, but I do highly recommend that you build with Odoo and get started on their platform. It will just make things a lot easier for you. And again, I will show you in a future video how exactly I'm using their platform. You can just click a link in the description to get started with that. And it was the same thing as the the TikTok video that did well with that book. Whereas, and this sounds like I'm making this up. I promise you I'm not making this up. I'd written 3 or so books by the time I was 14. I was considering giving up. They sold 3 or 4 copies total, right? As in, imagine writing 150,000 plus words of content. You put them everywhere, you try and get people to buy them, and you sell maybe 4. It's not a good feeling, not a good look. But I did decide to write this last book, this book about the stock market, because I love the stock market, I loved investing, and there wasn't a book out there for teens. So I spent 4 or 5 months writing this and editing and so on, and then I self-published it. And then I remember, 3 or 4 months, it would have been 3 months after I published it, I got an email from one of the distribution platforms, and it said, hey, you made $1,000. And in my mind, especially at that age, but $1,000 was so much money from a book, considering I'd put in 0 marketing for it. All my other ones had flopped, everything had got wrong, and then here was one single thing going right, totally by chance. And then I attempted to reproduce that, right, on many other books, and those books did, much better than the first few, but they didn't hit that level of exposure and also just sales and so on. So in retrospect, what that means is 20,000 words, 25,000 words or so was the length of the book, got more of a response from readers, got more exposure, more sales, delivered more to me than the other 500,000 plus words. And again, there you see that it's the 2 or 3% that happened to generate, in this case, not 98%, but certainly 90+% of the output, because that gave me the money to go and start hiring other writers, to put more time into writing my own books and so on. And the timing of that, just like day 29 out of 30, as in right when I was about to quit writing, right after a few years of just banging my head into a wall and thinking, okay, this is just the last one, I can't put more effort into it after this, is so strange, but it nearly always works out like that. It nearly always works out across these professional domains or projects when success is improbable, when you're not likely to get the given output, that some small part that you didn't think, some small piece of input is going to really generate the yield there. And the last framework or the last example I want to provide for this is my kind of focus over the last few years, and that's been on one hand the marketing business, and then on another hand a software business, and I'm kind of rolling out of marketing and much more so into the software side of things. Now in that time, over the past few years, I've taken hundreds of sales calls. We've worked with 30, 40 plus clients. And out of that cumulative breadth of work in terms of the output, so in terms of clients that I've delivered really good results for, and also in terms of just money as an income from that set of clients, there are probably 4 people that have delivered the super majority of yield, so revenue across those businesses, as in 4 connections. So out of, say, 100 plus, 200 plus sales calls that result in, say, 40 or so clients, 4 of those generate the most results, generate the most revenue, generate the best and longest standing relationships, the most referrals, and so on. Also, our investor in the software business of ours was a former client on the marketing side of things, right? So again, it's this one person out of 100 you're going to talk to that ended up giving us a substantial portion of the money and the equity that would go into starting that new business. So in each of these 3 cases, across marketing, across publishing, and across social media, it's this very small percent of what goes into the effort, the time, the money even that goes into these endeavors that generates most of what I'm looking to get out of the endeavor. And when I say generates, as I spoke to earlier, I mean directly generates, as in this single video got 2, 3, 4 million views, right? This single book got X amount of tens of thousands of dollars in sales, right? This single person got us X amount of revenue. But once again, the difficulty is that you need the rest of that. You need to put in the 2 years to make the videos, so you get the one video that gets the 5 million views. You need to put in the few years to do X, Y, and Z to get the one client, to get the one piece of work that does really well. But again, it never feels like that. For those first few years, for those first 500 videos, it feels like the polar opposite of that. It feels like, hey, this is just never going to get anywhere. And if there is a 1% chance even of success, if it is truly 98.2 or 98.9, just Pareto principle wise, then I have a very long and very dark road in front of me. And I'm not going to attempt to apply any sort of peaceful resolution to that, right? I'm not going to come out and say, yeah, no, it's always worth it. You always should put in the 98 and just pray for the 2, or put in the 98 that should generate on paper the 2. But what I will say is this, and again, this is why I made the video. If you think of things in terms of 80-20, if you think of things in terms of a sizable chunk of what I do is going to directly produce a enormous percent of the yield, then you will likely be worse off than the inverse, with the inverse being, let me focus on the process, let me focus on what I need to do to advance the given inputs. So my skills, the process at hand, whatever it may be, is just domain dependent. Let me focus on that with the knowledge that at some point the 2% will kick in. And the difference there is really just a matter of scope and time frame. Is in if you're focusing on the output, if you're focusing on, I want that 80-20 now, I put in a month of work, I put in 20, 30 videos, you're just net going to be worse off versus just, okay, let me nail the process and then let me just trust that the 2% will come and I'm going to put in the 98%, because the 98% is what indirectly supports that 2% of really critical work, whereas hindsight is 20/20, whereas you will only note, hey, this was the 2% in retrospect. As in, I didn't know that day 29 of 30 was going to blow up. I didn't know that that book, among all the others, was going to do really well. Sure, thought went into them, as in there was strategy, of course, in, okay, this is what I'm doing, this is why I'm doing it, and I want to do it well. But in terms of the unexpected, the unusual output there, right? The views, the sales, the reach, and so on, or just the response really that people have. That's really not something that on paper you can expect, that you can plan for. You have to just plan for, hey, this is the baseline, let me focus on the baseline and the process and whatnot, and then those spikes in output will come. Otherwise, that's the video, and I will see you in the next one. This is also like the first video and also only one in a long time that I filmed on a phone, so we'll see how you take to that. Cheers.